When I wake up, I do what many of you do. I reach for the phone. I'm not proud of it, and I'm not ashamed of it. I am pointing to a learned response that most of us now share. It is learned because the device delivers rewards on an uncertain schedule. Sometimes there is a message that matters. Sometimes a post performs well. Often there is nothing. That uncertainty, what behavioral science calls variable reward, trains the simple reflex to check again. The first check of the day becomes automatic long before we notice the pattern. This habit is reinforced by how attention and memory work. Each time we check, we invite a small surge of novelty. Our brain updates when reality is better or worse than expected. That update strengthens the urge to repeat the behavior. You do not need to believe in addiction to recognize this loop. It is design, repetition, and ordinary learning. The question is what this pattern does to the rest of the day. Problematic smartphone use, heavy, reactive, or poorly controlled, has been linked in multiple studies to higher symptoms of anxiety, depression, stress, and poor sleep. The links differ by person and context, but the direction is consistent. When the day starts with reactive checking, the rest of the day often follows the same rhythm: short bursts of attention, frequent task switching, and the sense that focus is harder than it used to be. Popular books have translated this science into plain language. Anders Hansen's work, known in Japan as the smartphone brain, describes how alerts and rapid switching drain attention. Newport's digital minimalism argues that technologies are not neutral. They embody business incentives that monetize our time. You do not need to accept every conclusion to see the practical point. If the phone is the first thing you touch, the default shape of the day is already set. I do not claim the phone is bad in itself. It helps with navigation, coordination, learning, and creative work. But any tool can be configured to the wrong default. A phone at arm's length next to the bed has almost zero friction. A notification stream set to on for everything creates constant opportunity for a quick hit of novelty. A habit formed in that environment will feel like choice even when it is an automatic sequence. There is a simple way to test whether the habit serves you. Ask yourself what changes when the phone stays outside the bedroom for a week. Most people report the same shift. Mornings feel slower but clearer. The first useful task gets done sooner. The urge to check fades after the first 10 minutes of being up. This is not magic. It is the absence of a cue. And when the cue disappears, many of the downstream behaviors do not start at all. I am not asking you to become ascetic. I am asking you to see the mechanism. A reflex learned through variable rewards and constant proximity will not be reversed by willpower alone. It changes when the environment changes. In the next chapter, I will show how app architecture makes this loop stronger by design, and why just be disciplined is not a fair fight. If you have ever blamed yourself for not being disciplined enough, consider how the software is built. Engagement is the metric that pays. Time on device and frequency of return keep the business running. To hit those metrics, the interface removes stopping points. Infinite scroll ensures there is always one more item. Pull to refresh assigns a small gamble to your gesture. Autoplay collapses the gap between one video and the next. Badges, streaks, and daily goals attach numbers to behavior so that doing nothing feels like falling behind. Underneath these patterns is a simple learning rule. When an outcome is better or worse than expected, the brain issues a prediction error and updates behavior. Uncertain rewards keep that system active. Even if the hit is small, one comment, one new follower, it is enough to prompt another check. Multiply that by dozens of apps, hundreds of notifications, and millions of users. And you get a culture that defaults to continuous partial attention. This is not a moral story about greedy engineers. It is a structural story. In a market that selects for engagement, designs that fragment attention but raise minutes survive. Designs that add friction or create natural endings often lose. Newport's advice, To decide which tools serve your values before adopting them is a corrective to this structure. Catherine Price's step-by-step program to separate cue, routine, and reward is another. Both approaches assume the same thing: environment beats willpower. So what does it look like to take back the default without quitting modern life? It means turning notifications into a tool you choose, not a channel that chooses you. It means moving high-variance apps off the first screen so that opening them requires intention. It means checking feeds in batched windows rather than in every empty moment. It means creating a device-free buffer before bed so that the most vulnerable hour of the day is not governed by a slot machine schedule. None of this is heroic. It is housekeeping. The deeper point is that your attention is valuable because it is scarce. When you let an architecture trained on billions of interactions set your rhythm, you will feel outmatched. When you change the architecture of your own day, even slightly, you start to feel in control again. The work is not to be stronger than your phone. The work is to make the phone less able to demand strength. Next, I want to talk about surveillance, not cameras and guards, but the quiet way the phone teaches us to monitor ourselves. The old model of surveillance imagined a watcher above and subjects below. Today, the most constant observer is you. The phone invites you to measure yourself: steps, sleep, heart rate, screen time. Social platforms add likes, views, and watch time. Metrics become a mirror. You do not just live, you record how well you are living. When the number moves, you adjust. Over time, you learn to optimize for the metric rather than for the underlying goal. That shift matters. When you choose what to post, what to say, or how quickly to reply, you picture an audience. You manage impressions not only with content, but with timing. Read receipts, typing indicators, and last-seen stamps turn response speed into a social signal. Availability becomes a proof of reliability. Presence becomes performance. None of this requires a rule or a threat. The possibility of being seen is enough. Data systems amplify the effect without caring who you are. Your clicks and pauses train recommendation engines to predict what will keep you engaged. The result can feel like a narrowed world: familiar topics, familiar emotions, familiar comparisons. It is not censorship. It is a loop that favors what you already respond to. When that loop is strong, going offline feels like neglecting a duty. You start to monitor yourself so the feed will approve. I am not against measurement. A sleep log can help you keep a consistent schedule. A step count can motivate a walk. The question is whether the metric is a decision aid or a leash. A good test is simple. Does this tracking make my choices broader or narrower? If it narrows them, you are serving the system's goal rather than your own. There is a practical response. Hide like counts if you can. Turn off non-essential analytics. Post and check at set times instead of tracking reactions in real time. Draft work in spaces that do not show social previews. Be explicit with friends and colleagues about response expectations so that delayed replies are normal. These small moves change how much the imagined gaze shapes your day. Autonomy is not the absence of influence. It is the ability to set a direction and act consistently with it. A phone can help or hinder that ability. If you let it score every move, it will make you predictable to the system and less available to yourself. If you set boundaries around what gets measured and when feedback arrives, you regain the room to think and to choose. In the next chapter, we look directly at thinking, what constant interruption does to it, and how to rebuild focus. Distraction is not a character defect. It is a design problem meeting a cognitive limit. Working memory holds only so much. Every switch imposes a cost to reload your mental model and leaves a residue from the previous task. With the phone nearby, micro-switches multiply. You lose not only time, but depth. Studies on task switching show slower, less accurate performance after interruptions. Experiments suggest that even the mere presence of a smartphone can reduce performance on demanding tasks. likely because part of your attention monitors the possibility of a check. Research on heavy, reactive phone use also aligns with higher stress and poorer sleep, which further weaken concentration. The pattern is straightforward. Fragmented attention undermines complex work. None of this means abandoning the device. It means defining when it does not get to set the pace. A practical approach starts with one clear target for a block of time and a commitment to keep the phone out of reach until that block ends. The first 10 minutes may feel uncomfortable, then the mind settles. If you batch messages into 2 or 3 windows, you convert dozens of interruptions into a few deliberate sessions. If you move high-variance apps off the home screen and use a full-screen editor for creation, you starve the reflex to glance. Content matters too. If most of your intake is short and fast, your output will be as well. Replacing part of the feed with books, papers, or long articles gives your mind material that supports insight. You do not need to do this for hours a day. You need reliable periods where depth is the default. Over weeks, deep work becomes less aversive because your baseline stimulation drops and progress itself becomes rewarding. Authors who argue for intentional use converge here. Hansen warns about rapid switching and attention costs. Newport asks you to choose tools by the values they serve rather than by novelty. Catherine Price shows that structured experiments can reset habits. Different paths, same endpoint. Thought needs boundaries. In the next chapter, we turn to the night, where boundaries matter most for recovery. Sleep repairs attention, mood, and self-control. When the phone moves into the evening, 2 predictable effects follow. The light, especially bright and close to the eyes, signals daytime and delays melatonin. The content, often emotional, uncertain, or socially evaluative, keeps arousal high. Either one can push sleep later and make it lighter. Together, they make the next day harder than it needs to be. Treat this as physiology. Create a buffer before bed and keep it consistent. 45 minutes is enough to notice a change. An hour is better. During that window, do not open feeds, videos, or work chat. Put the phone out of reach, ideally outside the bedroom. If you need an alarm, use a simple one or place the device across the room. Dim the lights and the screen. If you read on a device, use large text and very low brightness so you are not staring into a small lamp. Choose calm inputs, a paper book, light stretching, quiet music, or a brief conversation that is not about work. Tell the people who matter that you keep quiet hours, and keep them. Fix your wake-up time, open the curtains in the morning, and start a small task before checking the phone. If you wake at night, do not scroll. Get up, keep lights low, do something dull, and return to bed. Each time you avoid pairing the bed with bright, variable stimulation, you make the next night easier. The benefit is not only longer sleep, it is better sleep, which restores the very capacities that help you regulate phone use tomorrow. This is a feedback loop you can reverse. By protecting the night, you make the day less fragile. The final chapter widens the frame from personal habits to collective choices, because individual discipline scales when the environment changes with it. It is tempting to frame all of this as private virtue. Be stronger, try harder. But environments shape behavior. Schools that create phone-free periods protect shared attention. Workplaces that set expectations for delayed replies reduce the pressure to monitor messages constantly. Families that charge devices outside bedrooms make better sleep the default. These are design choices at the group level. They do not ban technology. They decide when it is not in charge. Public institutions have begun to respond. Some countries have tightened rules about smartphone use during class. International organizations have urged schools to adopt clear limits and to justify digital tools by learning outcomes rather than by novelty. You do not need to wait for policy to change. You can adopt the same principle in your team, your home, and your own schedule. Technology earns its place by serving a defined goal. I am not calling for a return to an earlier century. I am asking for a higher standard of fit between tools and values. Keep what helps you think, learn, coordinate, and create. Remove what sells your attention back to you at a discount. Configure the rest so that good behavior is easy and reactive checking is not. If you want a first move, make it concrete. Leave the phone outside the bedroom for 2 weeks. Batch your messages into 2 windows a day. Turn off all but essential person-to-person alerts. Replace 30 minutes of scrolling with 1 chapter of a book. None of this requires a special talent. It requires a decision about what kind of day you want to live. The title of this talk is blunt: Why you should ditch your smartphone now. Ditch does not have to mean throw it away. It can mean ditch the defaults that make you reactive. Ditch the settings that turn every quiet moment into a slot machine. Ditch the idea that the problem is your character. Configure the tool, or the tool will configure you. Start tonight and see how tomorrow feels.